and welcome to the Rona Report. My name is Chijioke Elizabeth. I am your host.
I'm Chi.
I'm Rock.
And I'm Marisa.
And this is a contemporary show where we discuss COVID-related current events. So we hope that you enjoy our episode today. Before we get into today's topic, I just wanted us to really quickly go over highlights, and this is where we discuss anything that has happened in the last week. Each of us go around and just pick one or two things that we thought was really interesting. Who would like to go first?
I guess I can go first. What was interesting to me? I do investing on the side. And the market this week slumped hard. And I think it is because the market was anticipating another stimulus package and it has not come yet. So now the reality of not having stimulus is scaring investors, it's scaring business owners, it's scaring corporate America because the stimulus was really holding up consumer spending. And we're also seeing rates of non-payment on rent going up as well. So interesting, very interesting to me. So we could actually get worse. We can actually start to drop down lower than where we're at right now. So very sobering information.
Thank you.
So this week, you know what? All I can really say is that I've become tired. I'm done with all of this. This has been one of the most exhausting, mentally draining, emotionally draining, physically draining weeks out of the whole year for me personally. You're like, I had a little bit of joy when I saw Trump at RBG's memorial and everybody booed him because he got a little taste of reality and really realized how much the country actually hates him, and that brought me joy. But other than that, this is just it's heavy. Like, it feels physically heavy. And I'm looking at Congress and they're talking about, I just I'm over it. You guys are unfocused and you're talking about filling seats when you still have millions and millions of Americans without a job, millions and millions of Americans who are afraid to go to work, millions and millions and millions of Americans getting sick, over 200,000 dead. You have where are your priorities? We're talking about, I understand we're talking about the presidential race. I understand that it's a huge deal, but I also understand over 200,000 Americans are dead.
Yeah.
And the market is in danger of crashing. To go off of what she said, like, how does every country in the world know this except for us? Every single developed country knows that you need to be dealing money to your citizens to keep the economy going so it doesn't crash.
Yeah.
I in the words of Scar, I feel like I'm surrounded by idiots. Like, I'm just like, ooh, the incompetence. So that's how I feel. Y'all ever wake up and really go like, is this really my life? Am I really living right now? Am I really living through this? Is what we're going through?
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing. I think that on that note, I feel like a lot of people are feeling the same way that you feel, specifically, with Trump saying what he's saying about not leaving the office peacefully, and then just, I think that's a great segue
into
into
saying foolish nonsense like that for about a year.
Right.
So,
and the thing is that I never thought he was going to have military backing, even when he said that. Again, there's already been correspondence between the Pentagon and various people in these offices saying that they don't care what Joe Biden or Trump said. They're not going to do shit for either one of them when it comes to an election, because they're like, that's the court's issue, that they're going to resolve it and they'll deal with that. But it's more so me thinking about, again, what happens when we have these white militias, these white men militias who are already going to protest and killing people and getting off scot-free and doing that in the midst of protesting. So what happens when you have an actual illegal election take place, or have something happen that the person who's in power currently doesn't like or agree with, all of a sudden galvanizing these people who he's already proven the ability to galvanize before to do violence?
Yeah.
Well, I guess my I think Trump, and I think the right overestimates their power. I will always point out the fact that the most productive parts of our country are the cities, right? The cities are what generate this country's wealth, essentially, and maintain it. So you can talk as much shit about Democrat-run cities. Well, these Democrat-run cities are literally holding the country up. So if they want to, I was thinking about this. If conservatives want to take the toys home, basically, and not engage in democracy anymore, it will be to their detriment. Their constituency will be the ones that suffer out in the countryside and the suburbs and the experts. Those will be the people that suffer first before those that are in the city. They may not.
I think when you say that, although I agree with you, I do also believe that there's so much entwined in like them being allowed to run scot-free and do whatever it is they seem in rural Arkansas. So if you're saying, okay, well, if you don't want to participate in the U.S. democracy, like live your life in Kansas, but there are Black people there, there are people of color there. I just see the violence heightening for people of color. So like there are too many systems like intertwined that we just can't let.
Well, I'm not saying let. I'm just saying it would be to their detriment. And speak to that, Black people have lived through white terror before, right?
It doesn't mean that you should anymore.
We still do, but that caused the mass migration.
That's what I was going to bring up. Black people will just move. They will just so. And what happens is when people leave those countryside areas, you see that what do those inhabitants they do? They don't have any industry, so they get on drugs and they are miserable.
Yeah.
That that's me being hyperbolic, but essentially you can look at the deep South, right? Where Black people in great numbers left. And what does the deep South look like? You could look at West Virginia as a great case, right? So if white people want to have a country how they want to have it, you can look at the states that already kind of look like that. Is that somewhere you want to live? Because a lot of these people that are conservatives really enjoy coming into the city and enjoying city life, right? And enjoying all the accoutrements of the city and all of it's crap. So it'll be painful if it happens, but those that will feel the most.
You're saying it will correct itself. The system will correct itself.
But Obi,
yeah,
aren't you tired of being afraid of the what if? Like at this point, I just want people to respond. But it's always like, but this may happen, but this may happen.
Right.
We have to consider this. I'm at the point where, because I feel like Democrats like to fight fire like a wildfire, because that's what is happening right now. Our country is in a wildfire state, and we're trying to fight it with a garden hose.
Right.
Yeah. Yep.
And I feel that now it's time to start fighting fire
with fire.
I don't know, not even with fire, with like an explosion. Right. I'm over this now. Yeah. I'm over our country I'm over it, because we can blame Donald Trump that he allowed 200,000 people to die. But were we fighting back? Were we saying like, Mr. President, in all respects, you're a liar and people are dying, and I refuse to allow people in my state to die over something frivolous, or it just to fight back or just push back.
Yeah.
I think the governors of certain states were doing that themselves kind of quietly.
I felt like mostly just Cuomo.
Yeah.
Cuomo. Newsom was kind of doing it in a more tactful way. Newsom was like, hey, if I can't get help, I'll just use all the power that the great state of California has, and I'll do what we have to do. He kind of let it up at the last minute, but I agree with what. Yeah.
Continue. End your thought, and then I'll ask my question.
I agree with what you're saying. I feel like the left is finally, and that's why I'm not upset at the rioting, because people need to take. People have always qualified people on left, the liberal, progressive, soft, and it's not the case. It's just that we're trying to preserve the system, right? But now you're showing us, okay, you don't care about the system, so why should we? And now they're trying to brand it as, oh, the cities are wild and da 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 da. And polls are showing that even don't believe that nonsense. So, it'll be interesting.
I mean, I think that I mean, this is not where I absolutely hear and agree with you guys both. I wanted us to get back to something that you mentioned earlier, Marisa, which was that you were tired, physically, emotionally, mentally, just due to kind of like what's been going on. And I wanted us to talk today about Breonna Taylor and kind of just have like an open forum to all put out like our thoughts concerning the event, which was that only one of the three officers brought to court for the Breonna Taylor's case was indicted for shooting the drywall and endangering Breonna Taylor's boyfriend's neighbors.
Endangering the wall.
Yeah. And so obviously there's been outrage. I actually attended the protest the day that the verdict came out here in New York City, and it was absolutely terrifying to like have to go out. Not to have to go out, I went out willingly. It was terrifying being outside and there are 12,000 people out on the streets, and there were like, strong police force. There were barricades of like cars, and like thankfully no one got hurt, but it was just like, here this woman she got murdered. People are upset, so they come out. And while we were walking through the city, like people were having dinner like outside. And it's like, it was almost as if to just reference what you said, Marisa, is like the US is in a wildfire, or like experiencing a wildfire, and like there's just so many thoughts concerning it. So long story short, I kind of just wanted us to have this open forum to like talk about it. And then anyone could, jump in. I would like us to keep it, under 5 minutes each, but however you're feeling, feel free.
Well, I just kind of knew it was going to be some BS. I mean, Kentucky declared a state of emergency, 5 days before the verdict even came out? So they were planning. They already knew that the verdict was going to be, for lack of better words, bullshit. And they were more ready to attack protesters for protesting that injustice and that unjust verdict under the jurisdiction, under the safety that it was a state of emergency, and they were right.
Yeah.
It just shows how little consideration they have for my life, for your life, for people that look like us, and people that want to join our fight. They have no consideration for our life. It was, horrifying that Because they really had to scour that rule book to figure out that's what we're going to use. They had to have somebody really look through the law book, and because I've never heard of a verdict like that. They had somebody like really, really look through, scour what they could use, and what they decided was the shots that the officer missed that hit the wall were more dangerous than the shots that went through that woman's body and killed her. Wouldn't want to waste the bullets now, would we? But that's where we are.
Yeah.
There's much more. It's so much more reprehensible to be out here wasting bullets than wasting life. And I'm sad that I don't expect more. I'm, human life only means something before it even, touches the ground.
Yeah.
So once you're out of the womb, you're all on your own. Negroes, this is our country. Like, I don't know how else you could scream that. And coming from that man who was out celebrating his engagement party, well, he should have been prosecuting. Like, we already knew that it was something. Like, when he was showing those pictures of his engagement party when he's supposed to be working on her case, he's so happy.
Right.
So, I don't expect more. I don't.
I think for me, yeah,
I can't do it anymore.
I would like to say that I think for me, it's the entire process or the entire situation concerning that, that led up even to the verdict, which was that these officers entered her house, killed her, tried to frame. It was a no-knock warrant, so that's what it is.
But they said, now they've said that there was a no-knock warrant. However, during the trial, they said they did announce themselves. 12 people said that they did not hear them announce themselves. One white person,
right,
said that they heard them announce.
Right.
And that's who they went with. Okay.
So not only did you enter this woman's house, murder her, you try to frame her boyfriend for it, saying that he was a drug dealer and that you had reasonable doubt to enter the home. Try to frame the boyfriend, couldn't get the boyfriend to, it didn't stand up, it didn't hold water, and then tried to have her ex-boyfriend testify that she was gang related, and then when that didn't hold water, then you gave her family money, $12 million for,
of taxpayer money.
I was gonna say, and then also it's not city giving money that the city just magically had. That's the citizens' money. That's people's money who are also in that community, who also are experiencing
loss and just
injustice. But also it's like the fact that it's like, wouldn't it be wild if you asked every single person in Louisville, Kentucky, and you know what, like specifically Black person, what would you do with $12 million in terms of, it's just like, if you were like given that, like, what would you do with it? Because in actuality, it's like, look, that's money that's being taken away from other community investments, money being taken away from healthcare, money being taken away from education. And it's like, when we talk about defunding police, when we talk about abolish the system of policing, it's like, yes, abolish this because it absorbs money and life in this way. That's what it does. It sucks in life and it sucks in money, and that's really it. But it's like, so long as the money that it's sucking in is also yours to then use to then commit violence against you, and also the life of second unit is also life that's not deemed the same value or worthy, then it's dismissed.
Yeah.
But
like, why would you take that money? Why wouldn't you take some money that actually like goes towards the police department?
Right.
Take some of that, because
y'all,
why
don't you have officers allow officers to get sued to get rid of that, get rid of that immunity, allow officers to get sued and let them be bankrupted by their own bullshit ass mistakes. But in actuality, again, going further, I would rather not that even be the situation, because I don't think that they should have the ability to walk around with these guns and kill people in the first fucking place, because that in and of itself is bullshit.
Right. Why
They
can't
shouldn't
people
have, they
talk
shouldn't
about
have
it?
guns. They shouldn't have a job. But that's really.
Let's say that it was an accident. Let's say like, oh, you didn't mean to do all this. You know, you can accidentally hit someone with your car and go to jail for 5 years. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of accidents that happen, but
Right.
people are still held responsible for that accident.
Yeah.
There's still a jurisdiction of like, oh, I didn't mean to kill my boyfriend. It's called a crime of passion. I accidentally went crazy and killed him in the moment. You know, I hit somebody with my car, involuntary manslaughter. There are titles for this. And for them to be so incredibly reckless with human life, there needs to be some accountability for that. And the fact that there's not just proves everyone's point even more.
Yeah, I think with when we touched on this at an earlier pod, and I knew there were going to be complications because of just the chronicle of what happened that night. So they attempted to enter the premises, and the boyfriend started firing because he didn't know. Like any man in his own place, he's a legal gun owner. If it was me, I would start, popping off too. He didn't know what was going on. So legally, and this is why you have to make the distinction between what is legal and what is just. Legally, the officers believe that their lives are in danger, right? So they start returning fire. So under the context of the law, it is legal to return fire when you're receiving fire. If you're under the premise of, I am legally executing a warrant. The issue is that, yeah,
he shot at the floor when the police came in.
It doesn't
just
matter.
Warning shots.
It doesn't
but
matter.
They actually started shooting at them.
It doesn't matter in this case because all the cops need is to hear gunfire and assume that their lives are in danger, right? So what's wrong is that a police officer's life is in many ways elevated above the life of
everyone else's life. Yeah, they're above the law, literally.
So the cops believe that they're in danger, and therefore they're kind of given a wide berth to do whatever they need to do to suppress and that threat to their danger. So they return fire, and in the process they kill Breonna Taylor. So why the charge is called wanton endangerment, which is also reckless endangerment. Why that is literally because in this context, the only legal bone they can throw us is that he was being reckless. That is literally they can't charge him with manslaughter because he was operating under the premise that his life was in danger. So under the law, he's defending his life and that of his colleagues. So what needs to happen is that there has to be a reform. We have to literally reform the system and say, okay, cool. If you guys make all of these mistakes, you are no longer allowed to exercise these privileges as an officer. So if you make a mistake, you not only do you go to the wrong house, but you yourself, you've failed to do all of these things correctly, then therefore it does not matter what danger you're under because you were wrong in the first place. So if I, a regular citizen, went to someone's house, the wrong person's house, started banging on their door, and they returned fire in certain states, I would just take that L. If I shot them and killed them, I would go to jail. But because they're police officers and they're operating under the premise of the law, that's why they get special treatment. This is why we have to do reform, police reform, because the system is literally built to protect them in every single predicament, regardless of what happens. And that's how Breonna Taylor's death and murder is now just gone unchecked, because there isn't a vehicle in the law to give her justice. There's no vehicle there. And that is what, and I understand why people are frustrated, but in order to fix this, we have to re-engage the system on a way that is continuous. It's relentless, and it has to be It has to go past the protest. It has to go past destruction of property. We literally have to sit down and organize and say, okay, cool. We've had situations like this before where people are not receiving protection because police officers are the ones doing the killing. So we need to decide as a municipality, we need to focus on who are we putting in power and change those rules and decide collectively that this is not the type of police we want in our cities. And I think after this election and election subsequently, those conversations will start to happen, but it's not going to happen until we start having conversations about why this is allowed to happen.
I have two
because
questions.
It's not
What do you?
It's not as simple. Continue. Go.
No, finish up your thought, because it's a question for everyone.
I think it's not as the law in itself, right? The way the system is set up is inherently racist. But
Say it again.
The way the system is set up is inherently racist because often those that have power are, white male cops, right?
It's like, they'll skew it for them.
Why are the lives of those of that demographic protected, right? But if this happened to Betty something Lou down the street, it would have been a similar outcome, especially with what really complicated it is that he shot first. So if the boyfriend wouldn't have shot first and she died, then they could have went a different way. But because the cops can say confidently that we thought we were in danger, and also we thought we were executing a legal warrant, even though they made all of those mistakes, but there is no charge for sloppy police work. There's no like you get a ding when you go back to the department during your next review, and that's literally it. They'll put you on administrative leave and that's it. But if a doctor miswrote a script and it ended up with somebody's death, the doctor would be
liable.
Yeah, the doctor would be liable on multiple. So for me, I would
criminal negligence.
If I'm right. So for me, if I'm thinking about, okay, how do we restructure police? Police should have practice insurance, the equivalent of police miles. If you want to carry a gun and earn a living as a police officer, you have to have insurance, individual officer insurance. And if you cannot obtain that insurance because you fucked up in the past, you cannot be an officer in the United States of America. But instead, cities insure the entire department as a whole, and taxpayers end up fronting that bill for that instead of individual officers. Whereas if you're a doctor, the doctors are paying those insurance premiums, or the hospital is paying it, and they worked out a deal with the doctor, and maybe they get less salary, stuff like that. So we really have to get creative as to how we're going to address police reform, and we really have to demand it. Like, we have to really demand it, or people need to run for office and on that platform and say, hey, this cannot happen again. Because if we continue just to go out in the street, protest, but we're electing the same people in the office that are supporting, then nothing is going to change at all. And I don't want us to become so hopeless, so nihilistic about it, because we keep seeing these outcomes. We keep seeing these outcomes because we haven't changed anything. Nothing has changed. And they are suppressing votes. They are keeping people's voices down. But it is as citizens, we have to step up to the plate and continue to keep fighting regardless. That's just how
My question is, I think that you hit everything on the head. You hit the nail on the head, Chi, about it being, there needs to be policy reform concerning police departments across the United States. My question is, because although you mentioned, the protests are not cute, but you guys are going out and you're being shown, like you're showing yourself, but in actuality, like none of this could really inflict change. My question is, because while I was out at the protests on Wednesday or Friday, I forget which day it was, they estimated that there were 12,000 people in New York at these protests. And it was just a protest. It was literally walking down the street, Black Lives Matter. And I was thinking to myself, how powerful would it be if all 12,000 of these people just fucked up like downtown Brooklyn, Soho, and just ran through New York City and fucked up everything? Do you think that action? No. Do you think that action would have ignited change?
I think no. I think it does ignite short term. It changes how people in power go about certain things, right? Mm-hmm. So I think when people, I think there's power in the mob, right? The state can either respond to the mob with overwhelming force, but often when that happens, you don't win the PR battle. So people see those images on the internet and, oh, this is crazy. I think it leads to short-term change, but what happens is, in the short term, they may do something to appease the mob, but the next time this happens, they already know that the mob is gonna do what the mob is gonna do, and they just protect against that. Right? So here in Cleveland, the first day of protests after George Floyd's murder, people went downtown and they wrecked stuff. So you know what they did here? They just blocked off downtown. Declared a state of emergency, blocked off downtown. So if you are out, I now have the legal right to arrest and detain you and prevent you from protesting and potentially. Yeah. So that's kind of the tricks they play. So yeah, you can get short-term change. You know, maybe they decide to arrest the officer just to appease everybody. Okay, the guy got arrested. But being arrested doesn't mean you go to jail. Even he has now been charged with this wanton endangerment. He could still get off on it. So we pissed about him getting this stupid charge. He can still beat this charge.
Right. He's not the first officer. The thing is, he's not the first officer to be indicted off of
negligence,
off of negligence, like violent action. Yeah, because it doesn't have to be like the same egregious state. It's
and most of the time, and the problem, well, it's starting to change. The police departments of America have done a good job as branding themselves as the saviors of America. The thin blue line, that bullshit, right? They've done a great job in doing that. So like, still to this day, a lot of people, it's starting to change. A lot of people believe police are inherently good, but you have to really think about the psychology of why you would want to become a cop.
Right.
Why would you want to carry around a gun every day, be a target, right? Engage in a dangerous, being a cop is inherently dangerous, right?
Right.
Why would you want to engage in that every day? There has to be some sort of reward psychologically for you. And that reward is power. People crave power. And if you crave power, it means you're likely to abuse power. And even the cops that maybe they don't kill somebody, but maybe they rough somebody up on when they arrest them, right? Maybe they lie to arrest somebody. There's a lot of these little sort of violations to the law and to procedure that they may engage in every day because, well, I'm a cop. What I say is I am the law, right? So we have to change how we view policing in this country. We have to change how we execute policing in this country. And that it requires a psychological change around the role of police. And
I do want to give an example to what you just said. I used to work as an agent at a hotel, and one of my managers actually wanted to, like, you know, it was his ambition to be a cop. And, you know, I did ask him, like, yo, like, why, like, you kind of what you were saying, G, like, why do you want to be a cop? Like, that doesn't sound like, you know, fun, getting like, it doesn't sound, at least to me, does not sound like a profession that I would personally choose. And he's like, well, I get to, like, you know, put away people, like all of the dudes that used to bully me, like when they see me pull up in the car, like, you know, they'll know, like,
there's something mentally wrong with that person.
Right.
They need
therapy.
Okay, I will say
he had taken, I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut anyone off, but like he had taken the test to be a cop twice and failed, and he was going back to take it again the third time. Yeah. So like it's just a number games for people. Like, they understand what power comes with the position, and they want that power, and they want to say, like, I'm that dude, and like I'm this person, and I have the right and authority to do what I like. It gives you immunity to.
It lifts you
the fact
above.
that he just felt confident telling you that he wants to arrest his high school bullies, in itself tells me that that person needs therapy and no business holding a gun
but there
at
is
all.
no psychological evaluation to become a cop. Like,
but other countries have already said that that's like, our standard is ridiculous, that we can train for 2 years and then be liable to pass judgment and hold a gun.
It's 6 months.
But to go back to what you were saying, the question that you asked about what if we just started effing, you know, just messing stuff up, or, you know, my answer to that is no. My mom was alive when they had and I was alive too, but I was a baby, but the Rodney King riots. So it was like, yes, people were mad and they were rioting. Like, it's one thing to burn up a Target. It's a whole different thing to burn up your own neighborhood. And they were these mom and pop shops. People were ruined from that, and they never came back from it. No, I don't believe in, it's one thing if you hit something that can come back, but of Soho, of all these neighborhoods where people live, no, absolutely not.
To compare someone losing their business, and I don't want to downplay, okay, you put your life savings into this business so you could be a bakery, to what they did to Rodney King and what they do to people of color. They brutalized, beat the living hell out of this man.
But people don't deserve to lose their livelihood. People who were not involved in that.
I'm not saying, so how else do we, I guess that's the question, is like, how else do we get change? Because what people are proposing is like, let's wait it out, let's have a presidential
I'm not proposing that at all.
Even, but like, just generally, let's wait for police reform, let's do all
that's people who are
by the book. But if we continue to do, I'm not inciting violence or rioting.
I'm not saying that you are
advocating.
Answering the question.
Yeah, I know. I'm just speaking like freely and out loudly, like, because I think about it a lot. Like, how else do you get changed? It's almost as if in America the only thing that we respond to and react to is force.
Yeah,
and like.
No, because I actually think the rioting was effective with George Floyd, and I only say this because for most of what I saw, it was people weren't destroying their own communities. People were going to going to the commercial districts of a city and destroying that, right? So you saw a Target on fire. And what was effective there is you saw corporate America like, oh shit. Like, if I do not come out publicly and say, I am for this, and if we do not, advocate for policy within our organization that is in line with socially progressive and social justice initiative, I could one, not only lose customers, but I could lose my assets as a corporation. So I think that was effective. Now, I do not think that it's hard to, in a riot, distinguish, well, what is a black business and what is a white business? Like, it's hard to do that. What if somebody's little, they put their life savings in that? I'm not advocating for that, but I do believe that the government has to know that people at some point won't take certain shit anymore. And I think that's what good to show. But if all you do is you riot, you burn something, and that's it, and you do not go after and go to council meetings and run for city council and engage at local, especially at your, because all of this stuff is it's not the FBI going around killing Black people. It's local police officers, local jurisdictions that are murdering Black bodies. The sheriff, the county police, the state police, the city police. Those are the organizations. So you have to push change on that level. And you also have to urge the federal government, hey, you can't have 1,000 different police jurisdictions doing whatever they want to do in each.
Right.
There has to be some type of uniform standard, uniform way to address police violence, or there will not be peace. I think that is a genuine tool in the toolbox of social disruption, but it can't be the only tool. Is what I believe.
I mean, look at you were talking earlier about how, you know, that Republicans lost these last 2 elections in 2018, and then there was like when we were having the women's movement.
Yeah,
we had all those women now in power in Congress. Ilhan Omar, ACO, or is that? Yeah, I think that's right. ACO, like you know, we are pushing not just for democratic policies, but for progressive policies, because democratic things want everything to stay the same. Everybody gets, you know, equal in their eyes, but we can all see that it's not equal. So we push for change in that way. When the Rodney King riots happened, it was our own. My mom said that she was laying with me in the bed and she could just see that Crenshaw was on fire. Who lives in Crenshaw? We do. We do. We were hurting ourselves.
I think Black people have learned from that. In this Georgia, I think they have learned from. I think we've learned from that. I think that what happened in Minneapolis was effective. Because even in they polled the nation, 70% Black Lives Matter went from a terrorist organization in the white people to like, all right,
we'll give it to them.
Right.
Yeah,
be on to something. Yeah.
Like white people was watching the George Floyd killing, and it was like, yeah, that's a little crazy, bro. Like, y'all was tripping, man. Like, dude was handcuffed and was begging for his mama.
Right.
So look, you had 2 of the officers sitting there, not even paying, like explicitly paying, like directing tension away. Yeah.
Like standing away, so you know something's wrong, right? If you standing there as an officer and you're uncomfortable, you can see the fact that they're uncomfortable on their faces, but you're not doing nothing.
And that's the thing, is like what you're talking about, Forchi, is like that idea of like, you know, or like even Elizabeth, the story you brought up of like, I want to be able to tell the people who did me wrong, I want to set them straight. And it's like this idea of all of a sudden you believe that you, just because you have this uniform, you have this badge, you have this unbelievable amount of responsibility that is misdirected and misguided, is that you then you believe that you embody the law. It is no longer, well, what is the law? It's what do I believe to be right, wrong? What do I believe to be good, and bad? And then that becomes what I then exert into the world, and what I'm willing to allow those around me who also are wearing the same uniform to do as well. Therefore, even if I don't agree with what your right and wrong is, if you say that's right and wrong because you're wearing the uniform, I'll let you take control of that. Exactly.
And
that's a whole other kind of danger.
I'm not gonna call you out. I'm not going to be like...
I'm not going to risk my power and my privilege in the police union and in this community of folks.
Right.
And so therefore, I'm not going to set you straight, and I'm not going to take care of the people who I'm really here to take care of, because I'm taking care of my power, my position, and us.
Yeah.
And they're paying us versus them.
The problem with policing, one of my lawyer friends brought this up. Policing is one of the only industries where there's a low barrier of entry and it's hard for you to be pushed out of.
Yep.
So once you get into being a police officer with your high school diploma and your 6 weeks of training, that is a job you'll most likely have for decades, regardless of what you do, because you have this powerful union that supports you. You have the law that codifies your actions, and the public sentiment is like cops are good for the most part. So that changed.
Can we talk about that as well before because I think that,
You want to give this topic more time?
No, I just wanted to like ask this little or just make this little quick statement, because this is the second time that you mentioned, Chi, that like most people feel police are good. I've, for the most part, have not. That hasn't been what's the word that I'm looking for? That hasn't kind of been like my experience, specifically like in the communities that I've lived in, that people feel safe with cops, right? And so I think now, more now than ever, we see people pulling away like cops are like not good people, like and I think that more of America is like not even only, I won't even use the word recognizing that, but coming there's been a new shift, what's the word I'm looking for, like perception of what cops are and who they are and what they do and what they represent to other people in the United States. And so if you can't trust the cops, who can you trust, right? And a lot of people are shifting from like, I'm not going to call the cops anymore. We're actually going to try to get social workers into our communities or help ourselves, right? So like,
I think a lot of people in the communities that we're moving around in have that sentiment, but I always like to remember that white people are still a majority in this nation, right? They won't be for long, but white people are still a majority in this nation. And there's still a great, if you poll white people that are above the age of 40, they'll still think that cops are a positive, force. I think a lot of people now are having more open conversations about like, okay, maybe not all cops are good. Maybe not even the system is good, right? I think people are more comfortable having that conversation. I think the police in this nation have done a good job of branding themselves as the guardians of against crime.
It's not even just police. It's the media. It's the TV shows that we see. SVU, how there's always some sort of good cop and little kid shows. And you are brought up to believe that the cops are good. And if you've had mostly good experience with cops, that's why you think everybody's
good. That's what you're going to believe, right?
Or even if you've never actually had an experience with a cop, you're going to make whatever fantasy that propaganda shows to you becomes the reality. Therefore, when someone tells you, I've had an experience different than the one that you've seen, and also the one you've never had, and then all of a sudden shit hits the fucking fan, because it's like, no, that can't be possible, because that's not what works for my reality.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of people have not had one experience with a cop ever.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people in this country have never been pulled over by the police. Maybe the only thing concerning the police is a cop comes in at school for them, and the cop is nice and tell them not to do drugs. Those are kind of the only
think of there.
Yeah. So, and they've never had a negative experience. And maybe you are someone that grew up in the suburbs, you drive a nice car, but you know what? I think certain police officers in certain jurisdictions have a really easy job. Like if, for instance, we have a suburb, if you've seen Little Fires Everywhere on Hulu, right? You live in that type of neighborhood, there's nothing bad happening. The cop is only writing speeding tickets, right? Or parking tickets.
What's really funny, I heard, if you see a cop, if you're in a town and their cops are like overweight, then they don't have that much to do. But all LA cops, if you see, like at least from what I've seen, they're all fit and hard and muscly. It's just like, oh shoot.
Yeah.
They know they might have to fight somebody for real.
Yeah, they might have to run.
Yeah.
Like if you have like nice squishy cops, remember they still have that stereotype that what do cops do? They eat donuts and drink coffee. They're not dangerous.
Well,
That's how it's
life being a cop. Also, you're sitting in a car for hours on end. So it really has to be police reform in this country, but we really have to think about what do we want the next iteration of policing to look like in America.
I think part of that too is also just like what what avenues of power do we really have? Because like, and not to say that, and I think I'm saying that not because I think we don't have them, but because they're being underutilized in the sense that, like, when it comes to council meetings, when it comes to the fact that citizens actually could collectively write legislation and propose that to the council, and be like, actually, this is exactly what we want the policing in our community to look like, or even not policing, this is what we want safety to look like in our community, and completely separate. I mean, I'm not saying, within certain jurisdictions, but more so in terms of like community people could come together and they could work with like council members in terms of like developing and then putting through. So it's not just like, oh, they're working with the council member, going to meetings, getting updates. It's like, no, we're working with you because you're going to put through exactly what we say that we want in our community.
What we want. This is exactly what lobbyists do it all of the time. They literally give Congress pieces of legislation and Congress looks at it.
They say insert state here.
Yeah. And they pass it.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. People can be their own lobbyists. People can be their own advocates. It's just a matter of organizing it. And that some of that work is already being done. I'm not saying it hasn't been done, but there has to be also, and this is why education is so important. A lot of our issues in America are education issues. But because we funded education and funded other aspects of our community.
Prisons, policing.
Right? Prisons, policing. People don't know what to do, but all they know is that they're angry.
Right.
So it's like, I'm going to go fuck some shit up, which if you don't know anything else to do, that's all you know to do. That's logical. So we have to change. It's like, okay, we fuck shit up. What's the next step? What are we going to do? Who are the ones among us that can help us through this? And that's why I'm not really a fan of a lot of the horizontal leadership that we've adopted now, is because there's an anti-intellectualism that's set into this country because we all believe that we're thought leaders. No, we're not. All of us have different skills. So maybe you're meant to fill a space on a protest line. Maybe somebody else is meant to be in a back room typing up the legislation that we submit to the government after they're like, yo, what do you want? Like, we want this to stop. What do you guys want? But if we're protesting, the government's like, what do you guys want? And we don't have an answer.
Right. And we're just like, free us. Stop killing us. It's like, okay. Like,
it's like, well, we'll try to do that tomorrow.
Yeah.
We're expecting the people in power to cede power.
Yeah.
What? Willingly?
Right.
Because we're mad for we're mad for 2 months at a time. Yeah. The only reason why the protests were even this effective is because we had a pandemic where millions of people are out of work and literally did not have to go to work the next day.
Yeah.
So they could be in the streets for days on end because they had nowhere to go.
I was like, occupying City Hall, just taking up spaces.
Right. So think if people had places, are going to pick their livelihoods over protesting because in a capitalist society, they have to.
So do you remember Occupy Wall Street?
Huh?
Do you remember Occupy Wall Street?
Yeah, Occupy. Yeah, I remember. But that happened.
The thing is, that happened a while ago. That also happened with a very particular community of folks, in the sense, and I'm saying that in the sense of, it wasn't a larger organizing body where they had specific demands. It was just people who tangentially.
They were there for months.
Yeah, they were there for months. It wasn't big enough. It was very, not to say that what they were doing was wrong, but it was very wide. It was very wide. It was very male sort of oriented.
Yeah, and I think that's so weird that white males were protesting and kind of just got disregarded.
But that's kind of the thing too. It's almost in a way where it's like they were kind of like, we're protesting this because, we kind of don't like it. But in actuality, are we really fazed by it? Does it really affect our power, our position in this country in a way where we are at a dire state of what's going to look different after this? I think it's just different.
Yeah, it was different because
I don't want us to, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, Chi, but I don't want us to get off the topic. I do kind of just want to wrap up what we were talking about, and should we come back and talk about, this next, then we do that. But any last comments concerning, the verdict, policing, anything we want people to know?
Yeah, I will just say that this will keep happening until until we reform. And we have to be, as people, we have to be at the forefront of that reform. We have to look for new leaders. And new leaders are being born through this, right? There's a great progressive wave, I think, that's about to come and wash through. And I think the old leaders are realizing that if they do not, like, especially the Democratic Party, if they do not confront these issues in a way that is somewhat convincing, that they could be washed out of office too. But it means that we have to continually press the system. And if we have to break the system, we have to break it. But it can't be reactionary. It has to be progressive and continuous. That's my little ending on that.
Thank you. I don't want to follow up with that. Anyone? So, yeah, this has been the Rona Report. My name is Elizabeth Chijioke. I'm your host.
I'm Chi.
I'm Rock.
And I'm Marisa.
And we hope you enjoyed watching us.